Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. Throughout history, humans have been both fascinated and, to an extent, terrified of the deep ocean, projecting our fears in the form of gigantic sea monsters that menace heroes, devour ships, and inhabit the blank and faraway spaces of sea on medieval and early modern maps. While the majority of these ancient beasts are strictly imaginary, at least some were based on sightings and encounters with very real animals, in particular members of the group Cetacea, which contains the whales, dolphins and their relatives. While these marine animals are quite familiar and even beloved by modern audiences thanks to books, films and nature documentaries, to many ancient cultures, whales were giant, mysterious monstrosities, considered to be the greatest of all fish. On a superficial level, this is an understandable conclusion, as many fully marine tetrapods do end up resembling fish to a degree due to convergent evolution, although even in ancient times there were some who proposed that cetaceans were more like land mammals. In the 3rd century BCE, the Greek philosopher Aristotle made many accurate conclusions about cetacean biology, noting that the creatures gave birth to live young which were fed on milk, lacked gills, and possessed lungs and bones that were close to those of mammals. However, he still sometimes confusingly referred to whales and dolphins as fish, which would unfortunately remain an influential point lasting into the early 20th century if you can believe it. Today, we can confidently state that old Aristotle was almost correct, in that cetaceans are definitely mammals, although it has only been in the last few decades that their evolutionary history and relationships have been well understood. After decades of uncertainty regarding their origins, in the early 20th century it was proposed that cetaceans were either close relatives of, or descended from, a lineage of basal carnivorous ungulates known as Mesonychians. This was largely due to the superficial similar triangular shape of their teeth, with it being assumed that whales had evolved from terrestrial carnivorous ancestors during the Paleogene. However, fossils of very basal cetaceans were almost unknown at this time. In 1981, the primitive and semi-aquatic Pachycetus was described, revealing a superficially wolf-like animal with carnivorous habits. Although the remains were not complete, lacking the lower limbs and importantly the ankles, it was still held up as being the missing link between cetaceans and mesonychids. By the early 2000s, the proposed relationship to mesonychids came to be questioned, with well-preserved basal whale relatives being found that possessed the distinctive double pulley astragalus bone structure unique to true artiodactyls. Mesonychids lacked this feature, and are therefore considered to be very distant relatives of cetaceans, possibly being the sister group of artiodactyls, or perhaps even more basal ungulates. The redescription of the small early Eocene artiodactyl Indohyats as sister to all cetaceans finally settled this matter, with molecular and genetic analyses also demonstrating that the closest living relatives of these marine mammals were the hippos, with the two groups diverging roughly 53 million years ago. Other ancient cousins in the broader clade Whippomorpha include the mysterious giant Andrewsarchus, the vaguely pig-like Anthracotheres, and the imposing Entelodonts. While Indohyas was a very close relative of cetaceans, it was not a true member of this lineage, instead belonging to the sister group known as the Rowelliids. These were generally small digitigrade artiodactyls that inhabited what is now the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia during the early and middle Eocene. Despite 5 genera having been described and named, information about them is very hard to come by online, as is typical for many obscure Cenozoic mammal groups. The only well-known genus seems to be Indohyas itself, which is represented from early Eocene age deposits in the Indian region of Kashmir, dated to between 50 and 48 million years ago. Known from an almost complete skeleton, Indohyas was a small animal about the size of a domestic cat and weighed about 3 kilograms. It possessed a relatively narrow snout, equipped with quite unspecialised teeth, indicating a generalist omnivorous diet similar to modern pigs. In life, it probably would have lived much like a chevrotain or small forest antelope, feeding on soft leaves, fruit, invertebrates, and the occasional piece of scavenged meat or fish in a tropical forested environment. Despite resembling a fairly typical basal long-legged, long-tailed terrestrial artiodactyl, studies of its middle ear have revealed a structure very similar to those of cetaceans, suggesting that Indohyats was well equipped to detect sound underwater. In addition, the limb bones of Indohyats are osteosclerotic. This means that the outer dense layer of the bones is unusually thick, making them heavier. This is found in a whole range of aquatic animals, including sea cows, beavers, hippos, and early whales. Another indicator of aquatic habits is the ratio of oxygen 18 to oxygen 16 in Indohyats' tooth enamel. The ratio in this genus is comparable to that seen in aquatic mammals such as the hippopotamus, and very different from land mammals. This suggests that this skittish little ungulate probably utilised rivers and lakes in order to hide from predators such as mesonychids and oxyenids, diving beneath the surface probably minutes at a time, much like the modern African water chevrotain. This type of behaviour may have been the first step towards the further semi-aquatic adaptations seen in the first of the true cetaceans, with the omnivorous diet of Indohyas-like forms transitioning towards a more active carnivorous one in the first Archaeocetaceans. Speaking of which, the most basal lineage of cetaceans were the carnivorous semi-aquatic Pachycetids, which first appear in the fossil record roughly 50 million years ago, and were unsurprisingly native to Pakistan and northern India. 3 genera have been described, all of which were noticeably larger than Indohyas, being about the size of wolves or larger domestic dogs. These animals have been found in or near river deposits in northern Pakistan and northwestern India, a region which was probably arid with only temporary streams where these animals lived. No Pachycetids have been found in marine deposits, and they were apparently terrestrial or freshwater animals. Their long limbs and small feet also indicate that they were poor swimmers, probably being capable of paddling and bounding along the riverbed much like hippos. Their bones were heavy and compact and probably used as ballast. They clearly indicate Pachycetids were not fast runners, notwithstanding their otherwise cursorial morphology. Most likely, Pachycetids lived in or near bodies of fresh water, and their diet could have included both land animals and aquatic organisms. During the Eocene, Pakistan was a coastal region of the Eurasian landmass, and therefore an ideal habitat for the evolution and diversification of the Pachycetids. The type genus of the family was Pachycetus itself, with up to 4 species being described, which range between 1 to 2 metres in length, with a pointed snout, long heavy tail, and a full complement of mammalian teeth. Pachycetus would have resembled a strange canine more than a whale or dolphin. Unlike Indohyas, its molars were clearly adapted for processing meat, with it being suggested that the genus fed on fish and other small animals in and around fresh water. Like modern hippos, the eyes were placed high up on the skull, enabling Pachycetus to view its surroundings while submerged, an effective attribute for a semi-aquatic carnivore. Although the genus is often depicted with a hairy coat in paleoart, it is possible that the living animal may have been largely hairless, like hippos and modern cetaceans. Another Pachycetid, Ichthyolestes, was slightly smaller, being about the size of a red fox, and possessing a narrow, elongated snout well adapted for snapping at fish. Unlike modern whales and dolphins, its nose was located at the tip of the snout, and would have breathed much like living semi-aquatic carnivorans. Pachycetids were a short-lived group, persisting for only a few million years before dying out roughly 48 million years ago. They were joined in the rivers and lakes of early Eocene Pakistan by the roughly contemporary and more derived Ambulocytids, which may have evolved directly from the Pachycetids. By far the most famous of these was Ambulocytus itself, which was native to the Kuldana Formation of Pakistan between 48 and 47 million years ago. It was significantly larger and more heavily adapted for an aquatic existence than the Pachycetids, possessing an elongated narrow snout, proportionally large wide feet, and eyes that were positioned at the very top of the skull. Because of these features, it is hypothesized to have behaved much like a furry crocodile, waiting near the water's surface to ambush terrestrial mammals, utilising its powerful jaws to clamp down and tear apart prey. Additionally, its ears possess traits similar to modern cetaceans, which are specialised for hearing and detecting certain frequencies underwater, although these features were still only marginally developed. Measuring up to 3 metres or 10 feet long, and weighing in the region of 300 kilograms or 660 pounds, Ambulocytus was comparable to a male South American sea lion in terms of size, and, much like living pinnipeds, it may have been capable of still walking about on land, albeit rather clumsily, although some recent studies have suggested that it was almost totally aquatic in nature. In life, this carnivorous mammal probably swam in a similar manner to otters, utilising its large webbed feet and flexible torso for propulsion underwater. Stable carbon and oxygen isotope analyses indicate Ambulocytus inhabited brackish coastal waters, probably at or near river mouths, where it lived alongside requiem sharks, catfish, turtles and crocodilians. The genus may have also preyed on the stem perissodactyl Anthracobune when it came down to the river to drink. Two other genera of Ambulocytids are known, and both were also native to Pakistan during the early Eocene, with these being Gundacacea and Himalayacetus, although they are represented here by very fragmentary remains. By around 47 million years ago, another more derived family of Archaeocetaceans had appeared in the Indo-Pakistan region of the Tethys Sea, which was the epicenter of whale evolution. These were the Remingtonacetids, which took marine adaptations a step further than their earlier relatives, with elongated bodies and muscular tails adapted for otter-like underwater locomotion. Their snouts were narrow and almost gharial-like, being equipped with conical teeth at the front of the jaws and slicing triangular molars at the rear, well suited for grabbing and slicing through slippery fish and squid. The eyes were small and beady, somewhat like those of living river dolphins, suggesting that Remingtonacetids did not primarily rely on vision to hunt prey, perhaps utilising hearing and touch via sensitive snouts. The type genus, Remingtonacetis, was native to northern India and Pakistan between 45 and 43 million years ago. This slender animal measured about 3.5 metres or 11.5 feet long, and would have been an effective swimmer with a streamlined body, long tail, and flattened hydrodynamic skull. The limbs were short, but probably still enabled Remingtonacetus to come out of the water to rest and give birth. The related Coochiocetus was generally similar, but was notably smaller, measuring just 2 metres long, and resembled a strange hybrid of a gharial and an otter. The tail was elongated and powerfully muscled, clearly playing a very important role in swimming when compared to the short and gracile limbs. The narrow jaws would have been effective at making quick snapping motions in order to seize fish and other small aquatic animals. In life, Coochiocetus probably lived in coastal environments and was better adapted for ocean-going hunting than Ambulocytus and relatives, although it almost certainly preferred shallow lagoons to the open sea. It was once thought that Remingtonacetids were restricted to India and Pakistan, being unable to journey further afield. However, a Middle Eocene member of the family, Rhodocetus, was discovered in Egypt in 2016, demonstrating that these animals had spread across the Tethys and proving that they were more powerful swimmers than previously thought. Although successful, these crocodile otters died out by around 43 million years ago, probably being outcompeted by the more derived relatives such as the Protocetids. Although once thought to be a genuine grouping, in recent studies the Protocetids have been considered to form a grade rather than a clade that leads towards the totally marine Basilosaurids. These animals were diverse and widespread, being the first cetaceans to spread well beyond the Tethys Sea, with their range reaching into West Africa, eastern North America, and the Pacific coastline of South America. Like modern pinnipeds, Protocetids were clearly strong swimmers, capable of crossing significant stretches of open ocean, although they probably would have hugged the coastline in order to find places to rest and to escape from sharks and other marine predators. Some species are well represented in the fossil record, being known from near-complete skeletons which have given paleontologists a firm idea of their biology and life appearance. One of the better understood genera was Rhodocetus, from the Middle Eocene of Pakistan, measuring up to 3 metres long and possessing a heavier build than the Remingtonacetids. This semi-aquatic animal would have weighed up to 1,300 pounds in large male individuals. The sacrum was immobile, unlike in more basal Archaeocetaceans, while the limbs were quite short and terminated in broad webbed feet furnished with elongated digits. Despite being better adapted for a seagoing lifestyle, visible traces of its terrestrial artiodactyl ancestors remained, including the possession of small blunt hooves at the tips of the digits, the typical double pulley astragalus unique to even-toed ungulates, and differentiated heterodont teeth. Reconstructions of its anatomy have revealed many similarities to the modern desman, a semi-aquatic member of the mole family, which is a hind-foot-propelled diver that uses its tail as a rudder. It seems likely that Rhodocetus swam in a similar manner, with the living animal probably being largely hairless and quite blubbery like seals and sea lions. This may have also given it a passing resemblance to its distant modern cousin, the hippopotamus, when it was hauled out on land. The related genus Myocetus was quite similar, with a remarkably well-preserved specimen containing an unborn fetus which was positioned head first. This suggests that this animal, and probably other semi-aquatic archaeocetaceans, gave birth on land, with modern cetaceans developing from young born tail first instead. The hip bones of Myocetus were still strongly developed, although the short legs would have given it a waddling, awkward gait when walking on the beach, while the middle ear bones are similar to those of the totally marine Basilosaurus and living-toothed whales, presenting an odd mixture of traits wedged between land and sea. Some protocetids were very widespread, with the genus Rhodocetus being found in France, Italy and Peru, being the oldest known quadrupedal cetacean to inhabit the southern hemisphere. Other members of the family were becoming more obviously whale or dolphin-like, such as the Egyptian Protocetus. This modestly sized 2.5 metre genus possessed a more streamlined fusiform body shape, with nostrils that positioned halfway up the snout, representing an early stage in the development of a blowhole. The bones at the tail tip indicate the presence of a small fluke, enabling more efficient swimming. From forms such as this and the more derived Rhodocetus, the first truly marine cetaceans would evolve by the Middle Eocene, roughly 43 million years ago, in the form of the Basilosaurids. These would also be the first cetaceans to possess a near-global distribution, as well as producing the largest mammals on Earth during the Eocene in the form of the 17-metre-long apex predator Basilosaurus. However, discussion of these animals and the emergence of true modern whales from them will have to wait for a future video. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be covering the rise and development of the saber-toothed Permian Gorgonopsians, so until then I'll see you again soon. Cheerio.